In England, in the early part of the 19th century, dogfighting, ratting, and other such blood sports flourished. Cruelty and violence was the essence of entertainment. Arenas known as pits were found throughout the country, the most famous being the Westminster Pit, where dogfighting and ratting were the main events. Detailed rules and regulations were strictly enforced by overseers, who governed the many matches. Bouts were highly publicized among the local citizenship, and it was not uncommon to see the members of the upper class in attendance. It was a sport that appealed to all classes of people. The wealthier members of society found the events to be entertaining, while the lower classes raised and trained fighting dogs for a means of survival. No breeding records were kept, but through magazine articles and writings of the period, it is certain that fighting stock came from crossing the bulldog with the many types of terriers that showed gameness. These crosses produced a breed known as the Bull and Terrier, champions of the pit. Eventually becoming extinct, these tenacious Bull and Terriers were highly revered as the best fighting dog of the time. It was from these Bull and Terriers crossed with the many larger Black and Tan Terriers that James Hinks again crossed with the White English Terrier and Dalmatian that he developed a new strain of all-white dog he called the Bull Terrier.
You know, a lot of people say the breed started because James Hinks in Birmingham wanted to breed a better fighting dog. I don't think that was anything to do with it. Basically, if you go to around 1860, a lot of things were happening. The first dog shows were coming on. The middle class in England wanted dogs that we call prize or pet dogs that conveyed social status. James Hinks was a professional. He sold animals, dogs and other animals. So he bred something that the public wanted. And he trademarked that product with a white coat. And that's why the white coat was all important, because it distinguished the dog from everything else. So it was the early days of marketing. He marketed a white dog. And that's what happened. So it's a manufactured breed. I think actually that he bred that from a bulldog, directly from a bulldog and a English White Terrier. And he had both of those, and he showed them in 1860. Rather than from an old Bull and Terrier cross and an English White Terrier. But that's speculation. We simply don't know. But James Hinks bred a dog that he could sell to the public, and the public had a lot of money, the middle class in England, and they could show them, and these dogs had a lot of status to them. Went along with this all-white dog, which is why he wanted that all-white dog.
Popularity of the white one spread throughout the countryside, and in 1888, the Bull Terrier Club was successfully organized in England. In America, it wasn't until 1895, 11 years after the formation of the American Kennel Club, that a group of fanciers, led by President Frank Dole, a New Haven, Connecticut dog dealer, submitted application for membership to the AKC. Records show that membership was granted, but later that same year, the Bull Terrier Club of America was dropped from the rolls. No actual or formal announcement was given by the AKC for the decision to drop the BTCA from membership, but it seems as though an issue concerning ear cropping may have been the cause for such action. It was at that time in England that a decree from the royal family banned ear cropping. This action led the American Kennel Club to adopt a similar ban. The look of an uncropped ear did not sit well with the American Bull Terrier fancier, and they fought the AKC openly. Besides the ear cropping issue, research also shows that the BTCA was awarding prizes not consistent with AKC policies. These were probably the reasons for the unexplained loss of membership status. It wasn't until 1897 that the Bull Terrier Club of America reappeared on the roll of the AKC roster as a recognized breed club with C. Albert Stevens as president. By 1898, New York City was the mecca of dogdom. Trolley cars and horse-drawn carriages shared the streets of Manhattan. The AKC, now 14 years in existence, but as yet having no formal residence, set the foundations for dog registrations and dog showing activities. Dog showing and breeding was quickly becoming a popular pastime for the young industrial nation. 7 years older than the AKC, the Westminster Kennel Club was hosting their 21st annual bench show. Along with bulldogs, dachshunds, and other terriers, the BTCA held its inaugural show on April 21st and 22nd, 1898 at the American Horse Exchange located at 50th Street and Broadway in the heart of New York City. Judging bull terriers was James Mortimer. Classes for dogs and bitches over 20 pounds and under 30 pounds were offered, as well as classes for dogs and bitches over 30 pounds. Best Dog Award went to Princeton Monarch, and the Best Bitch Award went to Modesty. No champion or special classes were offered. Claiming classes were also offered. Similar to horse races, claiming amounts were published in the catalog. Dogs were sold at the show for a particular claiming price. By 1901, after a one-year reign of J. Lorillard Arden, the son of the leader of New York City's infamous Tammany Hall, took charge of the BTCA.
Except Henry Croker at the time was the son of a man named Richard Croker. And Richard Croker was, at that time, the head of Tammany Hall. Now, Tammany Hall was, of course, the big Democratic political organization in the city of New York and also the state of New York. So he was a man of considerable influence and considerable power, and Frank Croker, his son, carried some of that power with him. It didn't last very long, however, because Frank Croker, who apparently was a sportsman as well as raising bull terriers, died at the Daytona racetrack in Florida. He was a racer, and he had a mishap, and he died. So our first two presidents, our pre-history president, who was Frank Dole, didn't last very long, and Frank Croker didn't last long for other reasons. So that was really the start of the Bull Terrier Club of America.
Now, almost 100 years later, dog shows are nationwide. The Westminster Kennel Club still hosts the most publicized dog show in the country, and the American Horse Exchange that once hosted horse sales and dog shows has long since been replaced by the Winter Garden Theater, home of the longest-running Broadway show Cats. The BTCA has also continued to progress. The BTCA sponsors 4 specialty shows yearly and supports regional shows throughout the United States. Through support and encouragement of the BTCA, 27 regional clubs have organized. Not just limited to mainland U.S., Bull Terrier clubs are found in Hawaii, Mexico, and Canada. These clubs have become the grassroots foundation of the BTCA. Regional clubs support area shows, aid in the rescue and welfare operation in their territory, and if selected, organize the weekend-long Bull Terrier Gala that is highlighted by Silverwood, the annual meeting and BTCA specialty show. Besides organizing, sponsoring, and conducting shows, another primary responsibility of a parent club is to formulate a standard of excellence for their breed. Under the watchful eye of the elected officers of the Bull Terrier Club of America, the Bull Terrier Standard of Perfection has gone through many changes over the last 100 years.
The standard has changed a lot. It's, in fact, it's interesting. To research back in the early times of AKC. AKC started in 1884, and they began to recognize breeds, but strangely enough, they didn't have standards for those breeds. The standards were primarily the responsibility of the clubs. So to begin to find the origins of the Bull Terrier Standard, you go back as early as 1873, and there were descriptions in various books as to what the breeds were supposed to look like. And in 1873, there was a book published by a man named James that included the Bull Terrier as the standard. Interesting enough, as early as that, the Bull Terrier then, in 1873, was a white Bull Terrier. Although, if you look back in the very origins of the breed, back prior to the intervention of Hinks, or the introduction of Hinks, they were both colored white. I mean, they were mixed colors. It was only till Hinks came along that he developed essentially the pure white bull terrier. 1873, though, already by that time, clearly the color was white. Interesting enough was the weight, and the weight standard set in 1873 was from 12 pounds to 35 pounds or more, as it described it. So the dogs of that time were much, much smaller. And of course, we understand that because we know the origin of the breed was the combination of the English White Terrier and the English Bulldog of the time, which of course doesn't look anything like the Bulldog that we know now. The next standard that we see is in 1879. Also, the weight remains about the same. The color remains white. This is the first mention that the ears are to be cropped. And we'll note it goes for a long, long time in which the standard of the breed was a cropped ear. In 1891 was the first standard adopted by the English Kennel Club. And that provided for a bull terrier a weight from 15 pounds to 50 pounds. It provided it was to be white, and also provided that the ears were to be cropped. We'll notice the principal variations that take place in the standards have to do with weight, with color, with ears, and disqualification. Up to this point, there's been no disqualification set. So the next standard that we really see is in 1915. Now, this is some 18 years after the Bull Terrier Club of America is formed. So they were operating pretty much with English standard from 1891 on up to 1950. In 1950, we find in the AKC Gazette the first publication of the Bull Terrier standard, approved and proposed by the Bull Terrier Club of America. Strangely enough, nothing is mentioned about weight. Doesn't say 15 pounds, doesn't say 50, doesn't say anything at all about weight. They just ignored it. They said the color is to be white. However, mismarks were not a disqualification. So they could have marks on the head, they could have marks on the back, and while it was a fault, wasn't a disqualification. They provided also ears were to be cropped, and this standard for the first time provided some disqualifications. It provided walleyes and flesh-colored noses. Those were disqualifications. And we know, at least we've learned since, that the reasons why those relate to the deafness problem within the breed even then. And that is that those two characteristics they thought related most likely to deafness, the lack of pigmentation and the wall eyes. We next go in AKC to some standards up about 1926. And this is the next standard that we see. 1926, we find the weight back mentioned in the standard, and it indicates it's from 12 pounds to 60 pounds. I mean, it's hard to believe, those of us today, think that someone could show a 12-pound bull terrier. But that's what they provided for. Again, it was to be white. Again, ears cropped. They added in some more disqualifications. They had the walleye, they had the flesh-colored nose, but they also added these qualifications, something they called a pig jaw, which obviously was an improper bite. And this will amuse many people today, and that is that a disqualification at that time was the tail over the back. If the tail was over the back, the dog was disqualified. We go on up to 1936, and again we get a slight change in the weight. The weight now is 25 pounds to 60 pounds. Dog's supposed to be white. Still, ears are supposed to be cropped. Now we get some more disqualifications, and these are the disqualifications that they list: flesh-colored nose, tail over back, pig jaw, wall eye, deafness, and marks behind the head. Mismarks now are a disqualification. So we've grown in numbers of disqualifications. From 1936 on, the standards didn't change a great deal. They didn't do wholesale changes on them. In 1951, and I really don't know the background in this, but they added a description of the temperament. And the temperament was that the bull terrier was to be full of fire, but of sweet disposition, amenable to training. Well, I suppose, and that's, of course, still in the standard, whatever that means. I mean, nice words, but it means they're supposed to be decent dogs. By 1957, after a fair amount of discussion within the club, the weight standard was done away with. So our breed is probably one of the few breeds that has no weight standard whatsoever. So it's not 12 pounds to 50 pounds. A bull terrier can in fact be 7 pounds or 77 pounds. In 1968, we had another change, and it was one of those changes that took place apparently because of a particular judging incident. I think I'm right in recalling that a judge, even as prominent as Alva Rosenberg at the time, had disqualified a white bull terrier because of tick markings. Because the standard then said that mismarks were a disqualification. Well, the breed went bananas over that and said that this can't be. I mean, not only are they not markings, they're just ticks, but in any event, the club voted in a change, and it made mismarks not a disqualification, only a fault, and it added this language. It says, the color is white, although marking on the heads are permitted. Any markings elsewhere on the coat are to be severely faulted. Skin pigmentation is not to be penalized. So that's where we got ourselves into the position where we say mismarks are to be severely faulted. It's because we moved from the position where they were a disqualification. And I think the people who were proposing the amendment didn't want to soften it too much to say mismarks were just another fault. So they created it as a severe fault. Now we know as breeders, it's not really a severe fault. I mean, we know that it's easier to breed out that fault than it is a bad front or a long dippy back or what have you. But if the problem that we run into is when non-breeder judges come to you and say, well, that's a severe fault. The standard says it's a severe fault, and you say, well, we know that, but the bull terrier people don't really believe that. So there's a slight deviation. In 74, the disqualifications that were left were blue eyes for the whites and predominantly white for the colors. Those were the only disqualifications. And we've lived with that ever since. In 1974 was probably the last change, and that was in the colored standard, in which they said, all things being equal, the preferred color is brindle. Previously, they said the preferred color is brindle. And so I guess they had judges who said if they saw a brindle dog and a tricolored dog, you prefer the brindle, period. Well, that was not clear and obviously not what was meant by the standard, and so they added this phrase, and we know obviously that never are all other things equal. There's always a differences. So we've gone through the ages from, what do we say, 1873, where we had sort of informal standards presented by writers, to the English standard, to the American standard. We've gone through a variety of weight change of qualifications, 12 ounces to 50 pounds, 12 pounds to 50 pounds. changes in disqualifications from tail over the back, walleye, pig jaw, down to the point where now in whites it's simply blue eyes, and in coloreds predominantly white. It's been a big change, and undoubtedly the dogs, what's sort of interesting is that the many of the descriptions of the dogs early on, as early as 1936 and so, really describe the bull terrier that we want today. Although you look at the bull terriers of 1936 and they didn't look at all like what they look today. But they did have in mind the idea of this oval egg-shaped head, well-filled foreface, and the reasonably compact body.
As in the case of the breed standard, changes are inevitable. Clubs must remain dynamic, but in many cases being dynamic forces changes that never seem to come easy. The greatest struggle faced by the BTCA was undoubtedly the battle of the membership over the acceptance of the colored bull terrier. As it was Hinks' intention to breed a pure white bull terrier, his advocates held staunchly to the idea that the breed must remain pure. Individuals such as William Kendrick held to the belief that if the colored bull terrier were to be recognized, it would certainly mongrelize the breed. The fight was vigorous against the adoption of the colored bull terrier. Also leading the fight was the outspoken club president, Reverend F.J. Heaney.
Reverend Heaney, and this is where you need Jim Boland here, because the Reverend Heaney was his pastor on Staten Island, and as Jim said, and please excuse my accent, the Reverend Heaney was a wonderful man. He was a kind and good man. He could forgive anything but a colored bull terrier. And that was true. I mean, they saw this as they're going to be the destruction of the breed. And so by 1936, I mean, they changed the standard, and this was when they became really active and said that if you have a marking behind the collar, you're disqualified. So the American Kennel Club, and there was a real fight between the Bull Terrier Club of America and the American Kennel Club. The American Kennel Club said, fine, that's the white bull terrier, and we'll develop a standard for the colored, and we'll develop our own standard for that. So that didn't work. So then you had a white standard, which was, and the Bull Terrier Club of America was representing the whites, and the coloreds were, ostracized. And this was the time when Mollison brought over the coloreds in 1934. That was the first ones that came to America. And even he had them under a different affix. Mollison had dark fleet for his colored ones and mole fleet for his white ones. So there were two different breeds almost. And that's what the Bull Terrier Club of America wanted. They didn't mind the colored bull terriers as long as it was a separate breed. But the American Kennel Club wouldn't tolerate this, and they said, eventually, by about 1940, the American Kennel Club came clean and said, if you're the parent club, you've got to take on both. The Bull Terrier Club of America refused to accept this for years, but it was inevitable. And eventually, by 1949, then the two came together, and they had them as separate varieties. And of course, America's the only place where you have two separate varieties now. The rest of the world shows them as one breed. In America, we have the coloreds and the whites.
And so it was. In 1937, the AKC listed the colored bull terrier as a variety of a distinct breed, and the BTCA was asked to assume responsibility for this new variety. Initially refusing, the club held out until threatened to be reduced to a variety club. The BTCA reluctantly recognized the colored bull terrier and adopted a colored bull terrier standard. Although forced to recognize the coloreds, the BTCA still shut its eyes to them. Shortly thereafter, America found herself in World War II. The progress of the BTCA was hampered, but the club remained active. When the war to end all wars came to a close in 1945, the colored and white conflict was quite alive and well. It wasn't until the 1947 annual meeting when the question to allow the coloreds to be shown at the next BTCA specialty was raised. By a vote of 32 to 18, the question passed. Then, in 1948, to finally close the issue, the American Kennel Club ruled that if the BTCA did not fully recognize the coloreds, they would lose their membership in the AKC. The two varieties of bull terriers were now official. They would be shown separately as individual varieties and each having representation in the group. Only at independent specialties, where no groups were offered, would the winners of the varieties compete for best of breed. This seemed to be the compromise. Being the only nation to judge coloreds and whites separately, the membership seems to support this practice. Even with the many attempts in the 1970s and 80s to bring the varieties together, the membership continues to stand firm in this separatist policy. From a public relations standpoint, the club utilized the AKC Gazette, as did most breed clubs. The Bull Terrier column first appeared in the November 1, 1928 issue. The author was W. Fred North. A delegate to the AKC, Mr. North was assigned the role of breed column author, even though he represented the Greyhound Club of America. It wasn't until June of 1929 that the task was given to Miss Drury Bud Sheraton, a true Bull Terrier fancier. Miss Sheraton, never at a loss for words, wrote the lengthiest columns. This New England resident maintained the position until 1954, a reign of 25 years. From 1954, many individuals contributed until 1969, when the task was given to Miss Marilyn Drews. She, too, a New Englander, carried the torch for another quarter century. For her dedication to the breed, Miss Drews received the coveted Bar Sinister Award in 1986. Besides the Gazette column, 2 other breed periodicals were published by the BTCA. In 1961, first reference to Barks was made. This publication continues to be the premier Bull Terrier newsletter, winning many awards for club publications. Barks is the quarterly magazine of the Bull Terrier Club of America. It has a circulation not limited to the United States. Barks is required reading for fanciers in England, Canada, Germany, Australia, and anywhere a Bull Terrier is found. Also published by the BTCA is The Record. First published in 1972, The Record is the yearbook of the BTCA. It usually contains many of the events, current articles, breeder showcases, and pertinent Bull Terrier information. Also included are reports detailing the latest champions, obedience winners, and recipients of the ROM Awards, and always the coverage of the most prestigious North American Bull Terrier event, Silverwood. In the late 60s, Raymond Oppenheimer, England's Bull Terrier guru, hosted many American visitors to the English trophy shows. Raymond suggested that a similar competition might do well in the States. While plans for such a U.S. competition were being made, BTCA members Hope and Bill Colquitt were tragically killed in separate auto accidents some 3 months apart. In tribute to these past presidents, the competition was named in honor of their accomplished kennel. On September 20, 1970, Mr. Oppenheimer, representing the English Bull Terrier Club, presented to the BTCA the famed Silverwood Trophy. And now, almost 30 years later, the Silverwood competition seems to have lived up to its expectation.
It unified our breed. What it did was it took these dogs from the separate regions of America, brought them all together, and we could see what we had and where we needed to go. Early on, we sort of forged our way through in ways that we thought were best. There was a bit of a match show quality to the early Silverwoods. Silverwood is still a work in progress. Now we're approaching the end of the third decade of the Silverwood, and we're still massaging it a little bit here and there. We're polishing up different aspects of it, whether it's procedure or whether it's the hospitality end of it, the social end of it. But Silverwood unified American Bull Terriers. Until that time, you had the odd import that would come over, and it would reign for a year or two until the next import came over. Not that that still doesn't occur, but it occurs to a lesser degree. With the Silverwood, we became one breed. The breed is ever so much better than it would have been otherwise. We've tried other things. We've had permanent trophies we thought would help. We have had, we've got our ROM, which we thought would help, but nothing has helped as much as the Silverwood. The Silverwood, you put all your cards on the table. Everybody gets together at one time, and we decide which dog bred in North America from the Arctic Circle to the North Shore of the Panama Canal, which Bull Terrier is the best for that particular year. The fact that early on we didn't get all the good Bull Terriers in is only shows how we have evolved. Now, if you're going to have a good bull terrier and you think it's a bull terrier, good bull terrier, you must take it to Silverwood. Early Silverwoods took just about any dog that qualified. There were different ways you could qualify. For example, we had regional rounds. I can remember back in 1971 holding a regional round in Jerry Schreiber's living room. At that point, the local club would put its imprimatur on a dog and send it off to Silverwood. You hoped it went to Silverwood. Not all the regional qualifiers went to Silverwood. There was a feeling of proprietary pride each regional club had. Now that's pretty much gone. Now Silverwood is everything. We had little rewards to give out to people. We had certificates we gave out. The National Club picked that up later on. We gave out ribbons. We gave out pins, all to show that the Silverwood was something that people wanted to go to. One of the big changes in Silverwood occurred, I believe, after the 10th Silverwood. I sat down with George Desjardins and one or two others, and we tried to figure out how we could make the Silverwood a little bit more significant. One of the things we decided was that the old method of showing all the dogs at once, Silverwood at the end of, say, Colored Bitches, really didn't recognize good dogs. So what we did was we decided to make a break. George was interested in that because George was very interested in feeding people. We made a break, people ate, and then they came back for the afternoon round. It was a quick jump from that to talking about making the cut. Many people come to the Silverwood with no real expectation of winning a major trophy, but they want to know if they can make the cut. This is wonderful because somebody can go home from the Silverwood and say, my dog was in there in the afternoon. So, as I said, Silverwood still is evolving.
Another factor in the evolution of Silverwood is the role of the judges. With 2 judges and a referee, the Silverwood is presided over unlike any other show. This method of judging and the judges' selection process always seems to create a lively topic for discussion among the members.
We've gone through many permutations of judging, for example. At one time, we didn't know what we wanted the referee to do. If you had a referee that was particularly influential, we tried to see if we could make him more representative of his position. We went through the do not talk phase, and that comes up time and again. Do you let your judges talk? Do you not let your judges talk? I've been in the ring stewarding, I think, 6 Silverwoods, and truthfully, I've seen it both ways. The danger in allowing the judges to talk is in having a dominant judge. I'm not saying that any judge has ever changed their opinion because of speaking to another judge, but if there's a perception that one judge is a little stronger than the other, then there are howls after that particular show. Then we go to the no talk, and of course the no talk has been carried to extremes. I remember one year the judges had to ask the steward to move the animals. The judges never even talked to the exhibitors, and that's a little bit on the silly side. But in any event, one of our early discussions was how do we choose the judges, and we have chosen judges for Silverwood in every fashion possible, other than putting everybody's name in a hat and pulling them out. The regionals suggested judges at one time. These judges would be kicked up to the national level where it was determined who was going to judge and, by extension, who was going to referee. We went through a period where judges were selected by the exhibitors. If you were qualified to exhibit in a Silverwood, you were allowed to select 3 judges. Again, the judges with the names that had the most votes became judges. That lasted for a while, and then that went out. Eventually, the choice of Silverwood judges went over to the board of directors. Subsequent to that, there was a nominating committee. I'm sorry, not a nominating, a judge's nominating committee. And they suggested names, and then the board acted on those names. Oh, gosh, I guess about maybe 10 years ago, the compatible slate concept came into being, where judges were selected according to their compatibility with their fellow judges. If it was perceived that a judge was perhaps not compatible with another judge, then we had to make a decision as to which one of the two we wanted. As it stands right now, the Silverwood judges are selected by the Judges Committee, or at least proposed by the Judges Committee, and seconded on to the Board of Directors, and then they make their final decision.
Another dynamic part of the Silverwood experience has undoubtedly been the various locations. The first Silverwood took place in a tranquil park in Old Greenwich, Connecticut.
The choice of site was and continues to be an issue. Early on, when it was felt that maybe Silverwood wasn't going to make it, we held Silverwoods outdoors. We held one in a parking lot. The outdoor Silverwoods prevailed for a number of years until I believe we went to Dallas for Silverwood, and that was brought indoors. The outdoor Silverwoods are spectacular. I prefer an outdoor Silverwood. The best Silverwood I've ever been to was the one in 1976 in Canada. It was determined that indoor shows were better for a variety of reasons. Obviously, weather is a problem. Early Silverwoods tended to be more in the vacation period, the late summer, where people could get away and the whole family could come to a Silverwood. Silverwoods now are held a little bit later than that, and it becomes a problem determining, if you have a kennel, whether the wife goes a particular year to Silverwood if it's across the country, or the husband goes. The sites right now are pretty much hotel ballrooms. We have some Silverwoods that some of us call airport Silverwoods. You fly into the airport, you get off the plane, and you go into a ballroom, and your dog is judged. You get back on the plane, and away you go. But I'd like to see another outdoor Silverwood sometime, but of course the conditions have to be right.
The 1996 Silverwood Trophy winner is number 332. My boy.
The Recognition of Merit program was developed to recognize those bull terriers of outstanding quality and having the potential to be of great influence on the future of the breed. Since its inception, the task of keeping the records of the ROM program has squarely sat on the shoulders of Ralph Bowles, past president and two-time Bar Sinister Award winner. Ralph has been instrumental in the many changes to the program over the years. Now a highly prized award, the Recognition of Merit program had a most difficult start. The ROM program was influenced by Raymond Oppenheimer and the English championship system.
I had been going back and forth to England quite a lot because Raymond Oppenheimer was such a tremendous force in the breed, and Eva Wetherell, who was his kennel manager and his partner, and they were very kind to me and were to many Americans and Canadians who came over. But I had a special bond with them that I was very anxious to keep going. And I went there often. They were very hospitable, and we would go and look at puppies. I mean, everybody who's been there knows the drill. You drive around in Raymond's wonderful big Rolls-Royce car and go visit litters of puppies all over England with Eva, and it was a tremendous learning experience and something that I just wish everybody could do because it just made a huge difference to me. But the system in England for judging is the challenge certificate system, and the Bull Terrier Club presents a list of qualified judges to the British Kennel Club. The Bull Terrier Club of England presents a list of judges that can judge these can give tickets, they call them challenge certificates. And a dog in England can be a champion if he wins 3 tickets, which means he has to be best of breed or best dog or best bitch, best of breed or best of opposite sex, at the championship shows in England, judged by a breeder judge. And in this country, we were still struggling with all-round judges, with poor entries, with people going to odd little shows in nowhere and taking 5 animals and making up their majors and making champions that weren't really, any good. So you couldn't really tell by the fact that a dog was a champion whether it was a really good dog or just a kind of good dog. So I was very hopeful that we could produce a system for our American Bull Terrier Club to recognize those dogs that were of English championship caliber, which meant that we had to single out certain shows and give them some kind of a Bull Terrier Club award that was tabulated by the Bull Terrier Club. And Marvin Tarlow, at about the same time, who was struggling away in Texas, which had no Bull Terrier Club at that time, and was kind of a wasteland for Bull Terriers, he was very alarmed at the fact that in order to finish a champion in Texas at that time, you had to take all your own dogs and hope that the same one won every time so it could be a champion. And that it didn't suit him at all. And he thought that there should be some way also of people doing this, sort of a CC business. So he and I undertook a correspondence beginning in January of 1973, I believe, trying to figure out how we would do this. And I still have copies of all the letters, and that's the only way I remember that we did this, but I've just reread the letters, and we decided that each specialty club, of which, remember, there were only 5 at that time, would be able to give a major ROM, which we now know is a ROM, and that the dogs, and then we fiddled around with how many points it would have to get and how many majors it would have to have, and then we decided that since the West Coast only had one breed club and was such a big state, California, and also other western states which didn't have much bull terrier population but would be included with California, that they should have several more shows that they could designate as shows for these 3-point ROMs. And also Fort Dearborn, which was the only club in the Midwest at that point. Dallas was not there. St. Louis wasn't there. You know, I mean, the Buckeye Club, which may not still be extant, but was pretty big for a while. So Fort Dearborn could have a couple of extra shows also. And then on the East Coast, and we also thought it would be a good idea if the BTCA had a specialty that floated. And that's how the floating specialty started, because they were always on the East Coast pretty much before that, at Oxridge in Connecticut. So we kind of fiddled around with it, and we had some correspondence up through 1970, the beginning of 74, and we made several proposals to the BTCA board about initiating this, and we met with enormous resistance. There was a lot of flack from people on the West Coast and in the Midwest because they didn't think it was fair. My contention was if there was that many bull terriers, I mean, they could finish 4 ROMs, well, 8 really, because 4 whites and 4 colors on the West Coast. And if there were that many superior dogs on the West Coast and that much breeding, there would be more specialty clubs. So since there was only one specialty club, it was kind of indicative that that's really all they had the dogs to support. Anyway, we went back and forth with this, and we refined it, and we fiddled around with it. And Doug Rose, who was the president, I think, in 73 and 74, finally appointed a committee, which was George Schreiber and myself and Frank Foley. And we were supposed to refine all this that Marvin Tarlow and I had been doing, and maybe other people. George, I think, had some thoughts about it kind of independently. And anyway, we were supposed to get our act together, so to speak, and make a proposal to the board. And I still have the handwritten original proposal that we made to the board in, I think it was late 73 or early 74.
As the ROM Award recognizes those bull terriers that may advance the quality of the breed from a conformation standpoint, the board in the early 70s explored the possibility of an award to recognize an individual who's made a significant historical or lifetime contribution to the breed in North America. Proposed and funded by the late Jim Mond, it became known as the Bar Sinister Award. And so we salute those who've been bestowed with the Bull Terrier Club of America's prestigious honor. As all formal organizations go, the role of the president is one of great importance. It's their responsibility to set the tone and direction of the club, preside over meetings, and to perform those duties necessary to oversee the organization's progress. They appoint and monitor the work of the various committees, and most importantly, act as the organization's spokesman and cheerleader. A good president helps a club grow. From an historical perspective, it appears as though the presidents of the BTCA all served admirably in their post and each made significant contributions during their tenure for the betterment and advancement of the breed and the BTCA. The membership owes their thanks to all of these individuals who've gone before, and hope that those who follow have the same dedication and love of our chosen breed, as exhibited by these leaders who served unselfishly. From our first specialty show judge, James Mortimer, to our 100th anniversary specialty breeder judge, Frank Alhino. From Frank Dole, our first president, to our 31st president, Dave Merriam. From the American Horse Exchange, to the many lavish ballrooms of the finest hotels throughout the United States, the BTCA has prospered. Now on the threshold of the year 2000 and the dawn of a second century, who'll be in charge of the roles of leadership? Will the new officers and directors of the BTCA continue to serve its membership to the best of their ability? Will the health and welfare of the breed be at the top of the list of priorities? Will the club experience changes that are positive and in the best interest of the breed? Does the future hold the possibility of a World Bull Terrier Federation, made up of the many national Bull Terrier clubs? Could an international conformation competition such as Silverwood be on the horizon?
It's a pleasant fantasy thinking of where Silverwood is going to go. Except for the quarantine laws in Great Britain, I would like to see a World Series of Bull Terriers. Certainly, we can take our dogs into other countries. I've been to dog shows in Bermuda, Mexico, and Canada. I would like to see a show perhaps that pits the Silverwood winner against the Bronze Trophy winner, against the English winner, one of the jug winners, and I don't know how to organize something like that. But indeed, that would be a marvelous a future to envisage, where you could take the best Bull Terrier from each country and put them together and determine who had the bragging rights for at least 1 year. Silverwood is super. I can't imagine anything that has been done in American Bull Terriers that comes close to it.
The members of the BTCA have a lot to be proud of. Now at the highest point of membership, with a substantial treasury, managed by dedicated officers, supported by hard-working committee people, the future of the club continues to look promising. The membership can look kindly upon the past and step into the future with continued hope that change of a positive nature will take place. Progress always comes from change, and the members of the Bull Terrier Club of America should always demand, welcome, support, and encourage change. But then again, maybe some things should always remain the same.